Hi, I'm Elaine with CurbVulture, and this is the CurbVulture Vintage Reselling Podcast, where we talk about all things that have to do with the business of reselling, whether it be staging, lighting, woodworking, the ins and outs of business, social media, whatever it is, we tackle it. And I am your host, Elaine Mingus, and I am CurbVulture, and I live in the Austin, Texas area. And I believe that we are keeping history out of the landfill when we are either CurbVulturing or bringing thrifted items home and restoring them. And today on my podcast, I have Aubrey from Haven Estate Sales, and I'm going to introduce her a little bit about yourself, Aubrey.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So in terms of where you can find me on social media, my primarily Instagram is the best place to find me. So it's Haven Vintage and Estates. Estates is plural. So that's my handle.
All right. And you have a website as well, right?
I do, yes. havenvintageandestatesales.com. I know it's a mouthful, but the shorter ones were taken, so we're just going with it.
That's all right. That's all right. You just need a link to click. You don't need.
Exactly.
All right. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into this?
During COVID, I, much like, everybody else, needed some kind of outlet. I was working full-time remotely, just like most people in the world, and just needed some kind of creative outlet. And we were living in like an 800 square foot apartment at the time. And I walked out to take the trash out and found a piece of furniture next to the dumpster, not in the dumpster, next to the dumpster. And I was like, oh, that's cute. And it was clean. And I was like, I'll just bring it home and just see what I can do with it. And so I did. And that kind of started this painting, changing up furniture from what it was. And I was like, I'll just record some stuff and put it on the internet and see if anybody enjoys it. It wasn't ever meant to be like a business necessarily when I first started. It was just an outlet, a creative outlet. And so it started with this silly little piece, and I just had a lot of fun with it. And that's kind of how it started.
And I want to point out, you were in an apartment, and I am assuming it's the apartment that when I first met you and we were, I picked up a couple things or dropped off a couple things. It's not like you had all of this space to stage and photograph and repair and restore. So kind of talk about that, because I think people who are listening might think, oh, I need a big garage or I need a driveway. You were dealing with a small space. So talk about that.
First of all, you definitely do need a garage. We joke all the time, like, it's never going back. You absolutely can do it. It is very much possible. It was never at that time meant to be a business, especially a furniture business. And so when it kind of blossomed into a reselling business, we were still living in that tiny apartment. It was hard. It's very possible, but it was very difficult. Having to rearrange the living room every day to have a staging wall and sanding things on my patio. And thankfully I had such wonderful neighbors that didn't care, I was very respectful about it, but not everybody has that benefit. So apartments can definitely be hard for it, but it's very much possible. But I really like having my garage now.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Where there's a will, there's a way. But I totally remember days of having all the furniture, because my garage was packed full with family stuff. And just having the front room where I'm like, couches are on the side, the upended. I've got 7 kids running around, yelling at them. So I absolutely appreciate having a bigger space, but it is possible to work with. My staging area was I think 5 by 5 feet. Very possible to still make money by reselling, even though you have a small space. So definitely don't let that stop you. But yeah, it's definitely better to have a bigger space.
I don't miss it.
I agree. I love having my studio.
Yeah.
So you live in my area. I remember I was actually thinking about it on the way driving to get my energy drink today. And I think there was a bamboo piece that I didn't want to restore. It was really cute.
Yeah.
But it had some water damage at the bottom. And I had it $60. I was just project piece, $60. And you were like, hey, we take 40. And then you came over and you picked it up. And then we kind of talked about how we did the same thing.
Yeah.
We kind of blossomed into a friendship, and luckily lived close to me. You had a full-time job that at some point you stopped your full-time job to do this reselling thing.
So I was in actually the tax industry, believe it or not. So I was in people operations full time, had a director position, did, had all the things that I thought I wanted and that looked good on paper, but was just kind of miserable, if I'm honest. And they were wonderful people, are wonderful people, but it just wasn't for me. I wasn't mentally healthy. We had a plan for me to leave at a certain time, but that kind of got expedited because I just wasn't doing well. Mental health is so very important. And I chose that stability over the stability of a paycheck, which thankfully I had the option at the time to do that. And I understand that's not an option for everybody. Made the choice, had a supportive partner that helped me through that, and just went for it. I was flipping furniture and like reselling a little bit just for fun. And again, to have that outlet, because that was also during this like chaotic time in the world, during a pandemic. And, we didn't know what tomorrow was going to look like. And so I just was taking it as it comes. And anyway, so just kind of blossomed from there. But I definitely don't miss the corporate world at all. I love being my own boss. It comes with its own challenges. It comes with its own hardships, but the good outweigh the hard things, in my opinion. So I like being all the things and making my own schedule and just making it work.
Yeah, I agree. It is the best and worst decision of my life.
Yeah.
It's a lot like motherhood. You're like, I love this little creature I made, but I also will kill you.
I know. Yeah, it's a lot.
And I think that's a beautiful sentiment, that especially when the world was in such chaos, it really made you realize what was important. And, crunching somebody else's numbers, living somebody else's dream was like, I'm sorry, if my days are numbered, we're going to do something that's really creative and is good for my mental health. And I know that you also have, so you did that for a little while, and then you did pick up a part-time job similar in a similar home space area with the cabinetry company. Am I correct?
Home builder. Yeah, home builder. So I'm actually still there. Yeah, so I still work there part-time, and they're great people, and it's that kind of steady paycheck, but it's also, I really enjoy it. I'm, working with beautiful things and custom homes. So it kind of fits in it sounds weird, but to me, it kind of fits in the whole furniture world. I see design, and I'm constantly like inspired by the things that we make and build, and working with really talented designers and architects in the city. And it's a really neat kind of outlet in that creative space as well. So I really do enjoy it.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point to, like, wherever we are, it may seem like, oh, well, I'm a, something by day and a furniture flipper by night. But all of those things, I really believe, make you into the unique reseller, furniture flipper that you can be. And you never know where those things will lead you. For me, I have always been in communications. I've been a creator. I've been journalism was my background. And now here I am doing a podcast. And so when I was furniture flipping at first, I'm just selling vintage furniture because that's what makes money and that's what feeds my family, and screw this writing and this speaking thing that never seemed to work out. And then lo and behold, it doesn't matter. It just, something about you and who you are comes through in every single area, and it makes you a unique individual. And who knows what the future holds, with looking at constantly being around new custom homes and seeing all this stuff. And then we'll talk about the estate sales and vintage furniture reselling. It'll all come together in this beautiful creation that is only able to be had by you. And I just think that is something that, as a listener, pointing out, never to compare yourself or where you came from, or, oh, if I had that background, maybe I would be. It's like, no, you were made perfectly on purpose, for a purpose, for such a time as this. And I think that's really beautiful in your story, is that all of it somehow is coming together, and it's a weird puzzle that you're not necessarily seeing the end result, but you can see some sort of coming together.
Yeah. It all blends together. So it's been really, really fun and very unique.
Yeah. Okay. And so can you kind of share the story about how you went from, you were vintage reselling, you were doing really good, you have really cute reels on Instagram. The one that always plays again and again in my mind is the dumb ways to die, how resellers would go into people's houses on a regular basis. Like, I don't know you, but I'm going to come in, I'm going to pick up this piece, I'm going to deliver this piece. And suddenly you're talking about somebody's grandmother's picture sitting on and you're like, This is not a serial killer.
Yeah, we don't make the wisest choices in this business.
Women, be smart. Don't go in houses that you know. And we're like,
yeah, house I don't know.
Headline, reseller dies.
Yes, make good choices. Take friends. Anyway,
because I'm a fiction novelist.
Yeah.
The same thing, novelist. I was like, well, what if I wrote like a reselling book and like it turned into like some sort of like murder mystery horror?
We're just not gonna worry about it.
People would read it. I would read it.
It's a very niche crowd.
Yeah. Anyhow, exactly. So tell me how you transition from selling, making reels, refurbishing furniture, which you do quite well, to this whole estate sale thing.
As a reseller, I was going to a lot of estate sales, as you know, looking for inventory because inventory can be tough to find. And so I also I love estate sales. You know, I grew up thrifting with my mom, and my mom's really crafty. She's a maker, and my dad's a woodworker. And so it just, you know, I was always surrounded by makers, and then we would always find a way to like repurpose things. And anyway, I grew up appreciating this kind of stuff. And so anyway, I started going to a lot more estate sales when I got into the reselling business because I needed things to sell. Over the years of going to sales, you know, you start to see a lot of the same people. You start building relationships with them. And I sparked a friendship with this local couple that's been in the estate sale business for 20 plus years, well respected in the community. I just kind of asked them one day, like, is this worth it? You know, because I'd been talking about mulling over the idea of starting an estate sale company because I was like, there's got to be money in this. This is interesting. I'm so curious about it. It's another form of reselling. It's just another, you know, niche thing within this community. And so I just asked that question, like, is this worth it? And, you know, they responded with a resounding yes, thankfully. And so kind of from there, we just kept talking. And eventually we moved into more of like a mentorship program. And that's kind of how I started my journey, you know, learning from some of the best in the business, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that in itself, the mentorship, it would be an interesting thing to, you know, I don't know. I mean, if that would be something that you would pursue eventually, that you could, you know, again, you know, kind of repurpose what you know and giving it to other people that might want to start estate sales too, you know, whether it be here in Austin, but more so probably across in different areas, because somebody that's 25, you know, have been doing it for 25 plus years. I know who you're talking about. They're older, they're not online, and there's a whole new generation of potential resellers that could come up and start that vintage reselling. And I don't know, you could be the first, you could be a mentor too, and just kind of pull, you know, you take that information from where it was and give it out to somebody else that they're never going to pass with those people. That's just an idea.
That entrepreneurial spirit never dies. So yeah, that's absolutely something I've thought about, but it's years down the line when I'm as experienced as they are, but absolutely hope to give that knowledge back one day.
So how do your estate sales work?
In a high level kind of way, my estate sales. So essentially I'm trying to think of how to what to explain. I get my clients, we sign a contract, but then once I'm actually hosting the sale, it's a 3-day sale. And so the first day is full price, second day is 25% off, last day is half off. And so it's just kind of a way to keep people coming back or keep, you know, the interest alive because people get excited about discounts. So that's at a high level how it works. There's all the prep beforehand, the staging, the cleaning, combing through every single item, every drawer, the attics, all the good stuff, the garages, and getting it ready for the sale. So that's a good 1 to 2 weeks of prep leading up to the sale.
You actually sent me an estate sale clean out that I'm doing right now. And I'm just like, you know, and this is a staged home that has already been kind of vetted. And I'm like, it's still a lot, like, because there's things you don't think about, brooms and mops and cleaning supplies and stuff that is just like, okay, well, what am I going to do with this half bottle of Lysol?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot to figure out.
Yeah. So kind of so like the natural inclination, I think, and I'm sure that you could talk about this from a buyer standpoint and a seller standpoint, is like, oh, I'll just wait until it's all 50% off. what is the like draw to go that first day?
Well, it just simply put may not be there the next day. We're in a first come, first serve business. I can't hold things. It's, I have a duty to my client, to sell their items at the best price possible. Contractually, I can't hold things because the goal is to sell it, right, and make them as much money as I can. It's always a risk, and I love a good coupon. I love discounts. I'm all about, not paying full price for things, which is why I thrift. So I get it and I respect it as a consumer. I completely understand and I encourage it, take the risk, but know that it's a risk, and it's the risk you take. So if you're cool with that, then yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I agree. And then one of the things that I know, and I don't actually go to estate sales as much because for me, it kind of, unless I'm going on that last day, it kind of prices you out to make the most profit. Mm-hmm. But I have to say that, the first day is amazing and you can get especially if you're on a higher end, you can get that Noguchi table or that Danish piece and you can sell it for triple what you buy it for at an estate sale. But I love also going the other days because the more stuff that if you get deep down and start really getting into what's left, you start really finding some gems that maybe were passed over as well when all the fancy big stuff starts to be kind of to dwindling down. So I think it's great to go on all the days because you never know what other item you'll see that second time, third time around.
Yeah. And it's definitely, it's great for resellers. It's not, like you said, it's not always ideal for resellers per se. And that's not necessarily who we're catering to in all aspects of estate sales, but there's definitely some treasures to be had for sure. But it's just, you hit the nail on the head when you were talking about you might get that Danish piece for less, like a fraction of what it would be brand new or, in a storefront, that has to pay their rent and that kind of thing. It's just a different concept and different approach to buying items secondhand. And it's always going to be a better price than what you would pay in a storefront. And I respect people that have brick and mortars. I'm not one of them. It's always going to be a little bit cheaper, to just shop secondhand. It just is.
So what is when you first went in, you were like, it's going to be this type of way owning an estate sale business. And now you're like, oh, actually.
I honestly had no idea what to expect going into this. I mean, I had hopes, and kind of, I think, some expectations. I knew I loved the idea of being in the business of people, being in a service-oriented business. So I wanted to find a way to give back to the world. But I also saw that it looked like a ton of work, and to no surprise, it definitely is. Being in this business comes with a lot of wonderful things, but it also comes with a lot of challenges and unique circumstances that I think a lot of people don't realize. Estate sales often focus around a transition in someone's life that isn't typically a happy one. It's generally a difficult one, whether it's they're downsizing, they're moving into assisted living, or they're moving their childhood home, out of their childhood home or the home that they raised their children in, or passing of a loved one. There aren't many happy circumstances surrounding an estate sale. I'm seeing more frequently people expatriating, getting out of the country, or digital nomads selling everything and moving, you're seeing a little bit more of that, but it's still not the common reason. The common reasons are passing of a loved one or downsizing. That leads to people needing to clear a home out so that they can sell it or rent it. But that comes with a lot of very understandable emotions, and tough conversations. And you really kind of have to be ready to have those tough conversations and really kind of sit in the sadness that people are in, sit in that grief with them. That's something that I have had to get better at as a professional and as an empath, not absorb all the grief that I'm around all the time. So I'm providing a service, but, more importantly, I'm being trusted, sometimes with a lifetime of items that these people have collected over the years and grown very attached to. And so it's a very emotion heavy business. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that behind the scenes stuff that's going on. So it can definitely be challenging to navigate that tough stuff with people, but I also find a lot of life in that. Like I really enjoy that process. So, and it's nice too that like I'm providing a service, to these people. It's a huge task that they need off of their plate so they can focus on whatever this difficult thing is that's in front of them.
I was just going to say that it's like almost being like, like a hospice nurse or an end of care nurse, but for estates, because there's so many things and emotions going into, we put so much emotion on things. And as I'm going through this estate sale clean out myself, there's linens that are beautiful and vintage and silver that, was a whole set because, they never got rid of it. And having that place where they're having to let something go for a monetary value that doesn't really encompass the lifetime and the emotions that they feel about that piece.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard and to navigate that as a seller, because you're like, I know you need to get rid of this, but I have to honor the fact that you think it's worth a certain amount of money. And finding that delicate balance is really important. And I think that getting into the estate sale business, you really have to think, can I, number one, sympathize with these people, but not be so empathetic that I take on that stress so that I can still be the life-giving force in this sale and not get, because if you start drowning underneath that, you'll start trying to charge prices that are exorbitant in another sale, and then it's not good for either party. So I think that's a really great point to point out.
Yeah. And pricing is such a dance. It's such a challenge. I mean, as a reseller, pricing is a dance. You don't want to undervalue something. You want to sell it for what it's worth, but you need to sell it so that you need to price it so that it'll sell. And I mean, I have a very limited amount of time at an estate sale. I have 3 days to clear an entire home. And sometimes those homes have 30 to 50 years worth of items in them. And I mean, if you just think about your house, I mean, unless you're an extreme minimalist, like I've got stuff in every drawer, I've got stuff stashed away in every nook and cranny. And it's just the level of stuff that people collect, and it just sometimes is hard to believe. I have a very limited amount of time, and that dance around pricing is like, it's tough. It's really tough. But, we've got years of experience in properly like appraising items and selling, listing them for what they're worth, but in such a way that they move, because that's the goal, right? My goal ultimately in 99% of estate sales is to clear the home. So if that's my goal, I've got to be able to do it.
So you touched on having things appraised. Talk about maybe a little bit about developing that community relationship with people who can help you during this estate sale process, like an appraiser. How do you develop those relationships? Where do you find an appraiser? And then are there other relationships that you've had to develop to do this?
You cannot be in this business without other people in the business. It's pretty incredible the amount of knowledge that goes into these things. And I'm not just talking about my own. I've got experience in pricing and staging, like professionally staging, doing all the things. And so over time, you gain that knowledge, right? I gain a lot of knowledge of what items are, what their collectability is, what their just value is. But again, I have to price it so that it moves. So sure, it may sell on Cherish or First Dibs for $20,000, but it's not going to sell in 3 days in your home in Austin, Texas for $20,000. So, there's a very...
I like to take a zero off of the Cherish number. I just take a zero off and then you have the resale.
Again, they're a business. I respect it, but prices are crazy. You cannot... I've built relationships with, jewelry professionals, grandfather clocks, like, it's just like the most random things, pianos, vehicles, like you have to know so many people, and I've got to have a number on speed dial that I can call and say, hey, I've got this item. You're the expert in this. Help me out. And oftentimes I'm paying other people to properly appraise a specific item if I just don't have that background. I'd say 90% of the things in a home, I have the background to properly price them and appraise them. But when, it comes to very specific items that I'm like, all right, I've learned how to test gold and silver. I've learned who to go to look at gemstones and identify. It's wild. There's so many people that come into play to do things the right way and to do things in such a way that really honor my client and their stuff that they have worked so hard for in their lives. Due diligence, like I want to make sure that I am appropriately pricing things, and it's a dance. You want to honor the client, but then cater to the consumer.
Yeah. And you didn't even, you've also thinking about delivery person. I know you have somebody that helps you on the cash register. Yeah. And there's so much, it's not just something, I'm just going to do an estate sale. Like it's a garage sale. Yeah. I mean, if it's your own home, fine. But when you're dealing with somebody else's stuff, who have emotional attachments, it's a whole nother thing. And you definitely want to honor that person. And I think I hear that a lot. And what you're saying is just really realizing, like, treat it like if it was your mom would want to be treated. And I think you do that really well. And so on top of that, there's other preparations you've had to do. So talk about the licensing and the permits and anything else that you need to do to have an estate sale.
Excuse me. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's licensing needed per se or permitting needed necessarily, but I am a business. I'm a registered business. I am offering a professional service to my clients as an estate liquidator. And so my feedback, I guess, to that topic would just be like, be a formal business, be a registered business. I have everything separated from my personal stuff for liability reasons, but then also having like insurance, is very important to make sure that, because people are coming through the home, they're working in the home, they may trip and fall. Like that's all really important stuff. And then I have a contract. Every single client, as well as myself, with that client signs a contract about their home that clearly outlines what I'm doing for them and then what's expected in return. So it is a contractual, relationship. So in terms of permits and all that, you don't necessarily need any of that, but I would strongly recommend being a business.
Now you have to advertise for an estate sale for people to show up. You can't just like pick at a sign at the day of the estate sale and expect people to come. I mean, sometimes that works, but not for 50 years of living in 3 days. So how do you do advertising?
Most people use estatesales.net, and that both on the consumer and shopper side, as well as the businesses. Estatesales.net is a fabulous resource. So, you can put in a zip code of wherever you are and see if there's any sales in your area as a shopper. But then as a company, I've got basically a membership with them. And so that allows me to post on their website and get views on the sale information that way. So I'd say that's probably the biggest method of advertisement that I do. I also am working on focused on growing my social media, especially my Instagram mostly, to kind of get local followers and get the word out that way, because that's today's world, right? And then I have an email list, so that's a big part of it too. So that's a private list that people opt into, and I send out emails when I have sales to kind of keep them posted on what's going on. But then also signage during the sale is, in my opinion, it's crucial. Like if there's a neighborhood that doesn't allow me to put signage up, sometimes I won't even do the sale because it's 10 to 20% of my traffic, if I had to guess. And that's not traffic I can afford to lose. Depends on what it is, but oftentimes that's a big decision maker for me is, can I put signs up? As a shopper, I love it when signs lead me straight to the sale. Like don't make me guess, don't make me hope that it's down this street. Like just put an arrow here, turn down the street, have a flag outside. Great, I'm there. And so I
for a second, as a graphic designer, less is more.
Yes.
Estate sale, arrow.
Yes.
I don't need any other information. Maybe if you want to put the address, but even then, estate sale, arrow, lots of signs that say exactly where to turn.
Yeah, I take the guesswork out of it. Yeah, and I mean, I've tried to slow down and read an address so many times for a garage sale or whatever, and it's not safe.
Honking, they're mad at you.
Yeah, this not a good idea. And so I am with you. Like I try to make it as clear as possible. Like you turn down this road, you turn here, and then there. So that's a big, for me, a big method of advertisement for sure.
Yeah. I think that's probably how I stop at most estate sales. Very rarely do I go on estatesales.net. I mean, sometimes I do, sometimes for sure. And Facebook, I know, is even also a great advertising. You want to put there's a estate sale, garage sale, whatever it is this Saturday, and have people show up and so talk about a little bit. So I want to back up. Have you had not your business, like pre Aubrey Haven event? Have you had any crazy moments when you've been at an estate sale? Or have you heard of any? I know there's there was one, I want to say somebody like people who were like, no, I was in front. And
oh yeah, you get some intense shoppers. Yeah. I mean, I thankfully, no, I haven't had anything crazy. I'm trying to think if I've had anything crazy, not to me, but I've definitely like been at sales where, people rush in the door. And I mean, I've talked to people who are like, yeah, I literally had an item in my hand and somebody took it out of my hands. Granted, they don't get to come back. Right. You can't act feral and expect to keep being a shopper. But no, thankfully I haven't I mean, everybody's been so kind, and like shoppers are so respectful, and, flow of traffic happens, and like we all just work together. And so far it's been fine. I'm sure I'll see some crazy stuff. I'm sure I will.
Yeah. I've honestly, it's easy to get in that, like, oh my gosh, I've got to get this item. If I saw it on Facebook as a, like, no early birds, but there's this item that I really, really want, is to realize, like, I know people call it the universe. I call it God. Like, if it's meant to be yours, you'll get it. Like, just take out all that chaos from your soul. And it's very normal that way, because you're anxious and you want that peace. Just say a prayer, whatever, and just like be like, if it's meant to be, then it'll be for me. Like it'll be fine. So yeah. I think I've heard some really crazy stories, like people pulling stuff out of people's hands or switching names on an item. I mean, there's been crazy things, but
yeah.
For the most part, people are pretty normal. It's not Black Friday.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely I give my little speeches before, we let everybody in each morning of just like, hey, don't take price tags off the pieces. Like if it's got a sold sticker on it, don't remove the sold sticker. Like I do have to sometimes coach shoppers through, like, be a decent human and don't be crazy. So I do have to remind people gently, let's just be good people today and have a good time. And if you missed out, you missed out, and we're, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. You kind of have to talk to them a little bit sometimes like that. But overall, everyone's been wonderful. And my clients and my shoppers are so great. And why I keep doing this, because it's just, I meet some of the best people.
And that's interesting that you actually give a little speech before you open the sale. I think that's an important point to point to, for people to know that that's a necessary thing, especially for those people who are showing up at 6 a.m. because they're the most potentially feral people.
They're on a mission, and I respect that mission. And that's exactly why I don't do pre-sales and all that stuff. Like, if you're in line, I'm going to respect that you waited in line. Like, good for you. Like, people show up before I get there. And I love that, so we'll have a line around the block waiting to get in the door, which is so much fun. And it's like such a rush every sale. I'm like, oh my God, look how many people showed up. And so, yeah, but it's a good little reminder, like there are some house rules and we're going to play by them. And that's going to be that.
To me, I feel like that's so cool. That feeling of like, look what I'm doing in the community. Like, people are showing up for what I've put on and the work. And that's kind of got to be a great payoff for sure, to see people come in and see a house. And I know that you've cleared out the last couple you've done. It's like everything is sold. It's done. I mean, that's got to be a fun feeling.
It is. It's exciting. It's unbelievable sometimes, because it's hard. It's easy to get caught up in like what's still in the house, as the sale is happening. And this, you got to stay focused on, it's going to be okay. It's going to work out. There's always a solution. Anyway.
Yeah. No. And I think that also, because I'm right in it, is that a week after the sale is done, you're not going to think about the sale anymore. Everything, even if you, that $10 you were haggling over for the refrigerator that cost $300, like, once it's gone, you won't think about it. It'll just be money in your pocket, making sure you have a mindset of what will I feel like in a week? Okay, then this stressed out feeling is going to leave. It's not going to be here forever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of why I love what I do. Like one of the many reasons that I love what I do is like, it's really great for my kind of type A side of my mind of like, once the task is done, the task is done. And then I move on to the next task. And it's just very regimented. And it's such a good feeling to be able to like hand the keys back to my client along with their paycheck and say your house is clean and you can do with it what you will now. Like it's on now, here, I did my job for you and I did it well. So that's always the goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you, I mean, we've talked about a lot here, but if you were to give either your former self or a new beginning person who's like, I want to start estate sales, what would be that one piece of advice that you're like, this is what I wish somebody would have told me?
Just be yourself. I mean, you know, like have fun. It's so easy in any business, but being a small business owner, it is so easy to compare yourself to other people and get caught up in their successes and lose sight of your own successes. And, you know, my partner has to remind me all the time, it's about the average. It's not about your month to month. It's about the average. Like you got to think bigger picture. And I need that reminder because it's really easy. Like summer, for example, summer's super slow for all retail. Summer's just hard. And so it's really easy to get caught up in the hard months or the slow months because I just came out of a crazy good month, you know, but it's like, oh yeah, I just came out of a crazy good month. Like there's a flip that needs to be switched in the thought process there. So yeah, just be yourself, have fun with it. As long as you're having fun, like who cares? Ultimately, it's all going to work out. But yeah, make sure you stretch. It's not easy on your body.
Oh yeah. I'm a big fan of the hot work because I had to do all my core exercise, and going to my chiropractor is 100% part of the resale business. If you didn't know already.
Yeah. It's definitely like, oh yeah, my body is not getting younger.
I know. I love that. It's like taking time to stop and celebrate the wins and not constantly moving that goalpost further and further out. I had a moment the other day. I'm selling this sleeper sofa that I got for free. Okay. I got it for free. And I had posted it for, you know, $750 because I always start high and sleeper sofas usually go within 3 days for me. And, it wasn't moving. And I was, I'd gotten another sleeper sofa and I'd gotten a kind of a plethora of stuff. So I'm like, okay, I need to make some room. So I started lowering the price. And finally, I think I sold it I had it for 600, and she was like, would you do 500, plus tax? And I was like, yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
And, they were coming and I was moving it out of the garage and I was like, just having a bad attitude. And I was like, angry. And I had to stop for a second. I thought, if this had been when I first started out and I was going to score literally $500 that all I did is I picked it up from another reseller who wanted to get rid of her storage unit and for free. I'm like literally getting a free $500. Like all I did is take a photo of it and clean it off a little bit. I would have been elated. And here I am 2 years later, like begrudging this task and not like remembering and celebrating the fact that this is a huge win. Like this is still a great way to make money. And just because I'm having either a bad day or it's not 2022 and we're not selling things hand over fist for the price that people aren't like falling over themselves for it, is to consider to keep celebrating those small wins and not constantly comparing this month to last month and realizing that it's all a fluctuation of things. It's an average, like you said.
Definitely. It's a constant reminder for me because I'm very much like if I don't do well, I'm not, it's a failure, and that's not true. And so, but that's like, I have to like switch that thought process into a more positive one because it's like, no, like doing good, doing well. Summer's hard. This happens every summer. You just got to keep reminding yourself of like, this is not reflective of who I am as a person. This is not reflective of who I am as a business owner, and we just got to keep moving forward. The hustle it's a hustle and it's hard. And it's, you definitely have those days where you're like, I don't want to hustle anymore. I'm tired of like finding ways to make money. But then I'm like, I get to find ways to make money. This is cool.
Yeah. I mean, having the entrepreneur spirit is its own blessing. And yes, there is a flip side of it where it can feel like a curse sometimes, but it is a blessing. And I was, like you said, not internalizing it and say, I personally am a bad person, because we're all feeling that recession. I actually was talking to a business owner that has been operating for 10 years. And they said this is the first year that they're just barely breaking even. And they've been like making money hand over fist for 10 years, and they're struggling. They're in the resale business, but it's a different type of resale. And really recognizing that the market does affect you, the time of the year affects you, and you're not alone if you're feeling like the pinch of this current, kind of recession right now. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. There's so much information. I probably could ask you 1,000 more questions about it. But if somebody wants to book you for an estate sale, where can they find you?
Best place to go is my website. So it's havenvintageandestatesales.com. Again, I know it's a mouthful, but it gets you where you need to be. My phone number's on there. There's a contact form that you can email me at as well. So I'm pretty easy to get a hold of if you want information. But yeah, basically what we do is, figure out if it makes sense. And then we schedule a walkthrough, and I come meet you in person and check out the house with you, and we go from there. So if all looks great and we both want to move forward, then we sign a contract, and that's that. So try to keep it as simple as possible.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Aubrey, for joining me on this CurbVulture reselling podcast. And I'm excited. My next guest is going to be, it's about flipping time. So definitely continue to check out this podcast, subscribe so that you can get the latest updates on the podcast. And I hope y'all all have a good reselling time.